Welcome, Dana. We are thrilled to have you here. Would you take a moment to introduce yourself?
I am Dana K. White. I always put the K in there because you're not going to find me if you don't put the K in there. I teach people how to declutter, and I teach from the perspective of someone who is a lifelong struggler with clutter. So that's my story is I had to dig my own way out, and I was writing about it on a blog back in the day that was anonymous. I didn't want anybody to know it was me because I was sharing my embarrassing secret. And then that was about 17 years ago, I think. Over time, as I figured things out and people said, please teach us what to do, I finally gave in and said, okay, I can teach you how to go from overwhelmed to, oh, I get it now. Even though I will never teach anyone how to have a perfect house. So,
Well, you do all of that and more. I mean, going back to when you started that anonymous blog, I want you to tell us the story about the name.
so the blog is still called A Slob Comes Clean. I don't really write on it necessarily anymore, but my podcast is called A Slob Comes Clean as well. And I do put out podcasts every week, but I didn't want to call it that. I had often said it's not like I'm a slob because I didn't like things messy. I didn't want things to be messy. I wasn't okay with it, right? And I knew how to clean. I just didn't know how to keep my house under control on an ongoing basis. I'd wanted to start writing, not about this, but my second kid was going to kindergarten and I was sitting in church and I was just like, this is the time to start a blog. And I hadn't started it because I was like, I've got to get my house under control first because this has been such a, issue for me my whole life. And I need to do that first. And I was praying. And that's when I just had this moment of, oh, write about that. Because I was asking God, please cure me of being so messy. Like, why have you not taken this away? Because it's keeping me from writing this thing that I really felt like God wanted me to do. And that was when the idea came to write about that. And at the same time, the name A Slob Comes Clean came to me. And I was like, ugh. First of all, I mean, it is kind of catchy, right?
It is.
But at the same time, it was using that word that I had often said, I'm not a slob. And I was so glad for it because using the word slob, which is the worst word, and I never tell anybody to call themselves a slob. I am not encouraging you to use that word. But for me, it set me on this path of total honesty, even though I wasn't using my real name. I had already admitted the worst thing that I'd never wanted to admit or called myself this thing. And so there was no point in sugarcoating or pretending. And because of that honesty, that is why I think I finally made the progress is that as I was trying to figure out what to do, I wasn't trying to reframe it and make myself look better, like, or, oh, but I'm not really this or whatever, like so many times when I would try to work on it, I was constantly like trying to make it not sound as bad as it was. And instead, I just was completely honest. And I also ended up finding my people that way because over time, as I met women who were nobody I knew, because I hadn't told anybody I knew what I was doing. But as people started reading it and saying, this is how my brain works, I was like, oh, these are all highly intelligent, creative women. And that's when I realized there is a definite connection between the creative side of my brain and this struggle. And so, having called myself a slob, I realized this is part of who I am. This is how my brain works. And that instead of being bad news, which it feels like it would be bad news, right? But instead of being bad news, it actually gave me the freedom to not feel like a failure because traditional organizing advice didn't work for me, because I realized this is how my brain works, and my brain works very, very differently from the brains of naturally organized people. And that is why the things I had tried to do before, the advice I had tried to follow, had never worked.
I love that so much. And that brings me to your book, How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. You go through these beautiful, I related very much because I think my mind might be very similar about the
Mhm.
fantasy versus
Yeah.
reality because we all have those thoughts. Oh, I'm going to keep that and do with that, whatever it could be. But That's gonna cost money to sell it. That's gonna cost time. So you go through all of those beautiful ideas of how to reel it back in and be actually human in that space of how your mind works. You talked about just now the word slab,
Mhm.
but now I think one of your favorite words is deslabification.
Yeah, I I think that was do you remember Project Runway? Did you ever
Yes.
watch that? I loved that show,
Yes, it was
and
great.
I remember that I looked back and was like, "Oh," because I think the first time I ever said it in a blog post, Tim Gunn was the host or something, and I think he was talking about elastic pants or something, like, and he said something about the slobification of America or something like that, when we kind of went away from tailored clothes. And I was like, so I'm doing a deslobification, and people latched onto that word. And so I use that word all the time. Like, this is my deslobification process. And yeah, it's been one of those. I love to make up words.
Well, it's a good one. I like it too. And you were talking just now about how your brain works,
Mhm.
and you specify you are a declutterer,
Mhm.
not an organizer.
Right.
Lean into that a little bit.
Yeah, I assumed when my house was a disaster, I would look around and the natural thing to come into my brain or out of my mouth was I've got to get organized. I've got to get organized. Like I would look at my completely disorganized mess and assume that the answer was getting organized. So I would try, but organizing because I wanted to get organized, I would sit down and make a list and make a plan and research systems and sometimes buy those systems and spend all this time trying to implement this system, and I could never maintain it. Or the more often that happened, the more I would be like, "Well, I've tried that before and that never worked." Like so it really made me hopeless. When I was, working through my home, my deslopification process, I got to this point where I was like, I don't even have it in me to organize. Like it just was so daunting and frustrating the thought of how many times I'd failed before that I was like, that's how bad this is. I'm just going to declutter. I'm not even going to worry about organizing until later. Well, when I decided that, I was able to immediately get started. I was able to immediately start getting stuff out. And I saw actual real impact on my home with everything that left. And I realized, oh, decluttering and organizing are not the same thing, but we assume that they're the same thing. And so when we look at our house and we think I've got to declutter and we're actually thinking about organizing, then we make this big plan and then we never get the stuff out. So actually decluttering is what changed my home. And with everything that left, my house was easier to manage. It functioned better. I knew where things were. I could find things. And so everything that left encouraged me to just declutter more and more. And then over time, I realized, oh, I don't even need to get organized because I just have less stuff. So I know where it is, which is part of my process is putting things in the place where I would look for it first. I know where it is. I can get to it. I can put it back easily. And I'm like, that's basically being organized, right? So it was never that I needed some kind of complicated system, it's that I needed to have less stuff.
Needed to have less stuff. I
Yeah.
like that. In your 5-step no mess decluttering process,
Mhm,
you go
mhm,
through project, tasks, habits.
mhm,
You talk about, well, if we're pulling everything out, we're going to have a mess. And that's what's stressing you out to begin with.
mhm,
So you really break it down into some basic, simple, it might take you a little bit longer. The speed of life, not the speed of
mhm,
light. That's so interesting because it just was a big aha. Wow,
mhm.
this could work and this could make sense to get
Yeah.
your house under control. Tell us a little bit about the process that you developed.
Yeah, so the I thought that when you started decluttering, the first step was to take everything out of the space and sort it into piles. And I thought that because that's what a lot of people will tell you has to be done, right? That's what you need to do. But that didn't work for me because I would pull things out of the space. I would look at the empty space and think, that looks amazing. I love it empty. And then I would turn around and see all the piles I had made on the floor or the cabinets or the counters or the table or whatever, all down the hallway, and I would shut down and freeze from feeling overwhelmed by all of that stuff. Because the idea was you take everything out and you just put back the things that you need. Well, I would look at the stuff and I was like, well, so maybe I don't need the cake server from my wedding, but do I have to convince myself to not need it? Well, that can take me a month of inner debate and then still not get anywhere, So it was just this long, difficult, overwhelming thing that would cause me to shut down. Or I would get going on something. I'd make all these piles and then life would happen. I had little kids and I would have to step away. And then this space stayed worse than it was before for hours or months, or whatever. And so
Right.
I had to come up with a way to not get myself into that situation that always, always ended badly. And so I just started going item by item and determining to never make a pile. So my process starts with the decision free steps, which is your trash, your easy stuff that you already know where it goes, and your obvious donations, and getting those things out. I have it in order so that it kind of works you into it from least difficult things to the harder things. But even when I get down to the stuff that I am gonna keep, but it has to go somewhere else, I'm gonna take it there now. And I'm not gonna make a pile, because if I will do that, then that means I can stop at any time. And knowing, and it will only be better, I'll only have made progress. And knowing I can stop at any time is actually the thing that lets me get started. Because I used to be like, okay, well, last time I tried this, I worked for an hour and then it was a disaster for 3 months after that. So obviously an hour is not enough. I need to set aside 5 hours. Well, who has 5 hours that you actually want to declutter when those 5 hours come around? Or I would think, okay, well, 5 hours wasn't enough. Maybe a weekend. Or how about the week between Christmas and New Year's? Or actually, I'm just going to wait till my kids start school. Or, okay, I'm going to wait till they go to college. Or I'm going to wait till I'm retired. That's how my brain would work, because it was never enough time, because I was always making it worse. And so I had to be able to make progress. So if I know I can stop, then I'm like, I can throw away trash for 5 minutes, make this space better. And that shift into doing things in that way is what changed my home. All those times where I was looking for the perfect time or the perfect amount of time to declutter, a perfect way to declutter, was just keeping my house under me as a disaster. Yeah.
Is that where you determined the difference between the projects and the tasks or habits?
Well, honestly, the tasks and the habits, like I talk about in How to Manage Your Home, is when I very first started. Like when I very first started, the day after my, second kid went to the day my second kid went to kindergarten, and I was like, I got to figure this out. I really truly was like, what is the smallest thing I could do? Because I knew that I had tried so many times to do this big project cleaning, and I didn't have the words for that yet. I just knew what I had done hadn't worked in the past. So I was like, what is the smallest thing I could do? And I was like, every time I go to clean my house, I have to start in the kitchen. And it takes me hours to get the kitchen cleaned up, and then I never get to the rest of the house. And I was like, I know there are people whose kitchens never get to that point. I don't know how they do it, but I was like, I am literally going to go the small. I'm just going to try to keep my dishes done. Then, like, it took me about a week before that started to feel kind of normal-ish, not like natural. I didn't realize I was doing it, but like, okay, it doesn't feel weird anymore. And so then I started adding other habits every week. And that was what helped me go, oh, these things that I've always thought of as maintenance tasks. So it didn't make sense to do them every day when my house was a disaster, because why would I maintain this? They're actually the thing that changed my home, was these little daily tasks. And so I realized that is so much more powerful than the big top to bottom cleans that I had tried to do, that I would put off doing the daily things until I had time for a top to bottom clean, which then made it worse, which made me think I needed more time, all that. Yeah.
That is perfect. You mentioned a little while ago about getting other systems. You've tried them
Mhm.
all, and maybe that would include purchasing some things like
Mhm.
containers.
Oh, absolutely.
But you talk about your container idea
Mhm.
where, sure, if you're going to get another container, you're probably going to fill it up. So, how can that decluttering process that you lean into
Mhm.
help you maintain those smaller containers or that smaller
So,
life?
yeah, it really came down to the fact that I did not understand what containers were for. Now, I would have been highly offended if you had told me I didn't understand, because I'd be like, "Of course I understand what they're for." I thought containers were meant to hold things. 'Cause I knew
Right.
organized people loved containers, and they were always talking about how, "Oh, I go here and I buy containers, and it's so great, and I love them." And I was like, "I want my house to look like yours." And so, obviously, it's the containers that, I need better containers or different containers or more containers or whatever. But I would bring them home, and my space never looked like theirs. Well, I was decluttering one day, and I was saying the word container out loud, and I went, "Oh, the word contain is inside the word container." And I realized that the purpose of a container is not to hold things, it's to contain. It's to serve as a boundary. The same way that firefighters work to contain a fire, they create a boundary. And as long as they can keep the fire inside that boundary, they can keep it under control. If it goes outside the boundary, that's when bad things happen. And so when I realized that, it just shifted how I thought about things. Instead of filling a container and still having more stuff and getting another container, and then still having more stuff and getting another container, and then not having any place to put those containers, I realized, oh, if I have this pile of crayons and I have a container, I'm going to put my favorite ones in first, and then it naturally sorts out and helps me go, okay, this container, the size of this container determines how many crayons I can keep and my space stay under control. If I try to keep more than that, that's when I can't keep it under control. And then I realize that the shelf I'm putting that container on is also a container. It's a limited space. It determines how many of those containers I can have. And then the size of the room determines how many shelves I can have. And the size of my house determines how many rooms there are. And I was like, oh, every space is a natural limit, and embracing that limit instead of just shoving more stuff in is how I can actually have a house that's under control. And so it's really shifting and looking at the container as the limit. And then I can blame the container. Because I used to look at every single crayon and say, "This is this a good crayon? Of course it's a good crayon." Because you can still color with a little nub of a crayon. And maybe I haven't ever used this one color, but who knows when I might want to use it. And so I would assess that, and that would take forever, and it would drain all my energy, and it would get me nowhere to be like, is this good or is this bad? Is this useful? Do I need it? Whatever. I can come up with reasons why it's useful, reasons why I need it. But if I say, this is the size of the space I have, then I put my favorite ones in first. I'm like, even though these are good things, they are useful things. But the truth is, my container is full. I don't have the space. And so I have to let it go. And that let me let things go that were good.
I like that simplicity. It's so radically honest that it's almost, wow, how can I just start this? I love that so much. But what I was thinking also about is the definition or the difference between would or should. Where you would say, if I was to keep this, where would I look for it? What is the difference between where I would look for it or where I should look for it?
Should allows my brain to spin out. Should makes me think that there is a correct answer. And as someone whose house had always been out of control, I did not trust myself on a correct answer. So therefore, I would research it. I might find myself Googling, where do people keep their crayons or whatever? Or I would be thinking, where did my mom keep hers? Where did my grandma keep hers? I would call my best friend. All of that is taking a lot of time. And then you end up coming up with this really great place, putting them there, and then never being able to find them again. Right. How many times have you heard people say, or have you said yourself, well, I got organized and now I can't find anything, which is the opposite of being organized, right?
Yes.
So if I will ask myself, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? Like the instinct. I don't know that it's there, but if I thought I was going to tear my house apart for the next 4 hours, where would I look first? What drawer would I open first? Assuming it was gonna be the first of 10 drawers I was gonna have to open. But what's the first one I would open? That's an instinct. And so it stops my brain from spinning out, because if I'm spinning out, then I'm not going on my instinct, right? Then I'm deciding and all this. Instead, I say, where would I look first? I would look in that drawer. Can I explain it? No. Do I need to explain it? No. I'm just going to put it in that space. And then what happens is in that moment when I need it, I'm like, oh, where is that? It's going to take me forever to find it. And I open this drawer and it's there. And then that's the goal of being organized, right? Is to find things in the first place where I look. And every time that happens, I gain more trust in this process. And then I trust that I can actually do this. But it's also like, it's also just accepting of yourself and how your family actually operates, and that it's okay if your friend says that everyone should always keep all of their nail polish in the cabinet in the bathroom. That is where they should go. Like, because people on the internet, especially, will tell you that, right? Like, this is where this item should go. But if you actually look for it in the bottom drawer of the desk in your living room and you put it in this place where it should go and then you can't find it, that's one of those things that just causes so much frustration over, I can never do this thing. What's wrong? But just going with actually your instinct is the thing that's going to make your home function.
You know, that's one of the most beautiful pieces of your writings, your podcast, your YouTubes, all of your passions is there is no judgment. And you
Right.
feel it when you are listening to you, when you're
Thank you.
reading your books, when you're in your, podcast. There is no judgment because you say, if you're going to put it here, that's you. That's do you. So
Yeah.
I appreciated that so much.
Yeah. Cause this was my story, right? Like, cause I had always been a disaster. And so I was like, I do want to be like someone else. Like, I don't want to be like this anymore. I want to be like her who doesn't struggle with this. But as long as I was trying to be like her, which was so different than how my brain worked, I was just like hitting my head against a wall. It just was never working. It was only when I said, I need to accept the way my brain works and use it, figure out how to use my brain. That was when I finally was able to be successful instead of trying to be like someone else. It's so much more effective to accept the way your brain works and go with that than it is to try to be someone different.
That is so perfect. I was on one of your YouTube lives
Uh-huh.
recently. There's a lot of questions that come up in our daily life that we don't have control over. And you have a simple 5-minute rule. Explain what someone can do with maybe one example.
So I call it the 5-minute pickup. The 5-minute pickup is, in those days, in the early days when I was trying to figure out, like, what are the daily things that I should be doing? Because I was starting to see the power of doing things daily. And I was like, I know that my friends, my kids were little at the time. They're not little anymore. But I was like, my friends whose houses are under control, if I'm over there in the evening or whatever, their kids they always pick things up, pick up their room or whatever. And so I had always been like, okay, I need to start doing that. Well, our house was so out of control that to say we're going to pick things up before we go to bed tonight was like a hours long task, right? And then nobody was happy. Everybody was dreading it. Everybody would resist that. And so I was like, I know I need to do a pickup. And 5 minutes was the smallest amount of time that I could justify, right? So I started saying, I'm going to do a 5-minute pickup at any point during the day. If my kids are home, they're going to do it with me. If I'm home by myself, I'm going to do it just me, whatever. I'm just going to do a 5-minute pickup, set a timer for 5 minutes of pickup and put away. And I couldn't believe the impact of just 5 focused minutes. And then I realized this is, again, how I work with how my brain works. I am the kind of person who randomly sets things down. I have no awareness that something left my hand. And there are people who will say, don't do that, which is a nice thought, except that I have no awareness that something left my hand. And so therefore, to tell me just don't do that means that then I feel like a constant failure because I'm like, I didn't mean to do that, but I did it. And so how can I stop? So instead I say, well, if I naturally do that, I'm going to do 5 minutes of picking stuff up and putting it away. So it combats that natural tendency to randomly set things down. And the more often that I do the 5-minute pickup the more awareness I have when something is leaving my hand, and the more likely I am to go ahead and put it away and not just randomly set it down. So it all works together, right? But it's also the thing to bring the family in on. It's the very best habit, which I always clarify with habits, it's really pre-made decisions. Like, this is something I'm going to do. This pre-made decision of the 5-minute pickup is a great thing to bring the kids in on, because once I can get to the point, in the beginning, they're going to resist. It will be hard and it won't be fun, right? But once everybody kind of goes, oh, she really means 5 minutes. We really are picking things up and putting them away, and everybody gets it down. Then if you have 4 or 5 people in your family, it's not 5 minutes of work. It's 20 to 25 minutes of work, which you can make huge progress in a house with that, right? So that those 5 minutes are incredibly powerful. They're also the gauge to let me know if I'm under my clutter threshold. Meaning, am I at the point where I only have in my house what I can easily keep under control? I can know that by seeing and experiencing that, okay, on a regular day, 5 minutes, I can get this all put away. If it's more than I can do in 5 minutes, then I know that I need to just have less stuff. I need to declutter some more. Yeah.
That is so smart. And yes, the power of modeling, but the more you do it, and then the power of multiplication,
Mhm.
like you said, 25 minutes right there. Well, we've been talking all about your systems and process, but I want to hear, tell me about your books. What's to come? What are you doing? You have a beautiful course that you collab on that people
Mhm.
can take, but tell
Yeah.
us all about your business.
Yeah. So I started out because I wanted to be a writer. And so I started a blog because I found out what those were. And I was like, well, that would make sense then, right? And then I started a podcast. It's been around for like 13 years now, which it's kind of a podcast dinosaur. That was one of the few things that I got in on the very beginning. And I have a YouTube channel as well. So I put out podcasts and YouTube videos on Thursdays. I have a newsletter that I write, but all of this, the goal was always to be a writer. And so the opportunity came through meeting other people who were writers. The opportunity came in 2015, I think it was, to sign with an agent. And then I got a publishing deal in 2016. And so I put out my first book called How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind, which I was like, this is the book that has to exist, that I don't know why they're letting me write it, but I have to write this book. It was the book I needed, right? It was the book for the person who was completely bumfuzzled by this issue, that most books about getting your house under control would start at a place that I was like, I would love to start there, but I'm starting way back here, and you can't even imagine where I'm starting. So it was that book. And then Decluttering at the Speed of Life was part of that same first contract that came out in 2018. And that one has now sold over 500,000 copies, which is, what in the world? Like, who would ever have thought? But that one is the one with my 5-step process in it. And I really wanted to drill down on decluttering, and I put it into a process and put all the things that I've been doing into a 5-step process for that book. And then that helped me so much and has helped so many people, just to have a 5-step process. So, and then I have other books that have come out as well. And then I have 2 books coming out in the next like year and a half, I think. So I have a book coming out in October about procrastination. And in that, I'm basically, what I learned, what I realized is that as I've been teaching decluttering, I have been basically teaching how to break through procrastination. Like that is it. So the decluttering process, I found myself using so many aspects of that in all sorts of situations where I needed to break through procrastination. And then I was hearing from people who were saying, this is how it's affecting all these other non-clutter areas of my life positively. And so I put that there. But my most recent book is of my first children's book, Woody's Pile of Pillows. And that has been probably the most fun thing that I've done. And as my daughter was reading it, and she was like, wait, is this about decluttering? As she got into it. And I was like, why do you think they would let me write a children's book? Yeah. So, but it's been really a really fun experience.
The children's book, I have it myself. It is
Thank
so cute. And I just thought it was a great compact story of what you're doing, but
you. Yeah.
in a really sweet story. So, yeah, it was really cute. I liked it so much. I wanted to talk about the procrastination just really quick
Sure, sure.
because I think they do go hand in hand. Because just when you said that, I know there's been times when I have a project or task, and sometimes I feel there's so much to do that I don't get anything done because I'm just walking around. Where should I start? Where
Yep.
should I start? Where I think, well, those probably really go hand in hand. So I'll keep my eye out for that. And tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about your course that you collab on.
Yeah, so I have several things. I have a lot of things that I do. One of the things about was in 2020, actually. I didn't know them, but Dawn from the Minimal Mom, she contacted me and she had read my book and she had done a video where she was trying out my process. And then I think I had spoken in her private group that she had. And she was like, "Hey, do you want to do a course together?" She had contacted me and then Cass from Clutterbug. And they are both YouTubers. Like that is their thing. And they both have like huge channels. At the time, I wasn't doing any YouTube at all. So they wanted to do this course together. And I was like, sure, why not? I didn't know it would turn into what it has turned into, but like it's called the Take Your House Back course and it goes on sale 3 times a year. It's expensive when it's not on sale, but we do put it on sale for a very reasonable price. So yeah, it's been really, really fun. It's first of all, we've kind of gotten to know each other's audiences and kind of brought them together. But it's also, Cass from Clutterbug is very sensitive to people's unique organizing styles. And so while I teach decluttering, I have decided and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to teach decluttering. That's what I'm here for. That is my purpose is to teach you how to declutter. And yet there are people who really want the cute systems. And Cass is the person for that. She is great for that. And then Dawn from the Minimal Mom, she is really passionate about family centered minimalism. And she is great at explaining that. And she's always got data and things to explain how you just don't need as much stuff, right? So it's just a really good combination of the three of us working together. And we're different. There's a lot of things we're different on. There's a lot of things that we're very, very aligned on. And so it's been a really, really fun experience to, you do a lot of stuff on your own on this online stuff that we do. But I now train decluttering coaches as well. And my coaches are out there, they're out there changing lives. I mean, truly, as we're recording this, just this past weekend, they were at my house. We did a retreat here for them and not all of them, but some of them were able to come. And I just, at one point I was like, I think we just need to take over the world because they are out there doing such amazing work and changing people's homes, because I just realized I I am teaching people how to do things. Anything you want to know, you can get from me really free if you want to kind of dig through or in the books, and the books are all at the libraries and things too, but you can get all of that and go apply it in your own home. But sometimes people need someone to come alongside them. And I've heard so many horror stories from people who hired someone to help who came in and didn't understand how their brain worked and didn't understand what they needed. And so I wanted to be able to provide, hey, here are people who get it and they will follow my process and you can go out there and they'll talk you through it. So I have a
Oh,
lot going on.
I would say fittable.
So
Well, I
fun.
know how busy you are, but thank you for your time. But before I ask where people can find you,
Mhm.
if someone wanted to start
Yeah.
decluttering, they are feeling maybe what we're talking about. They're feeling a little lost in their home. What would be the first thing they should start with?
What I recommend is that you follow what I call the visibility rules. So, what I mean by that is go to the place in your home that people would see if they came into your house. Wherever people would enter your house, go there and start there because you need a place to start. That was my situation. Every space in my house needed to be worked on, needed to be decluttered. And so I was like, where do I start? I had to have a place to start. That's how I did it. But the beauty of starting in the most visible space is that you make a positive decluttering impact on a space you're actually going to see on a regular basis. Where the normal tendency is that when you get inspired to declutter, you want to go to you want to go to the top shelf of your closet. You're like, okay, I'm going to work in this kind of obscure place that's been driving me crazy, but I've been meaning to do that. And so you go and you work in that space. But the problem with that is you can spend all day decluttering. And then your family gets home or somebody, rings the doorbell and you're scared to open the front door, or they ask you, what have you been doing all day? And you're like, well, I've been decluttering. And you see them look around like, really? Huh. Okay. That zaps your decluttering energy because you spent all that time and effort and your house doesn't look any better. But if you're seeing this progress, every time you go by there, you go, oh, that looks so good. Right? Oh, and you experience that. And then that perpetuates that decluttering energy instead of draining it. And so then you're more likely to start decluttering again sooner. You're also experiencing how much easier it is to live in a space with less stuff because it's actually out in your everyday life that you've decluttered. So that will produce decluttering momentum. And it's also just a way to prioritize.
Perfection. And I can see that ball rolling with that self-gratification,
Yeah.
and the visible work that you did is now clear and present. Well, Dana, this has been delightful. Can you tell our audience and people where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me. Just search for Dana K. White wherever. You can search anywhere. My website is still called slobcomesclean.com. And you can find links to everything there. I'm Dana K. White on YouTube. I'm a Slob Comes Clean on Instagram and all those places. So,
well, we will make sure we link them all up, and we appreciate all of your time today. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
This has been so fun.
Thanks for listening to the Redesigning Health and Home podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, we would love for you to like, share, and follow along so you can catch us on all future episodes. You can find me, Meg, at Fit, Fed, Feeling Good on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
And you can find me, Carrie, on my website at homestylewithcarrie.com and on Instagram and Facebook at Homestyle with Carrie. That's Kerri. And you can find both of us at Redesigning Health and Home on Instagram and Facebook. So join us next time for more inspiration on creating a home and a lifestyle that truly supports your best self.